Hi readers. I'm going to read a nonfiction book with you from Pioneer Valley Books. The publishers are giving us permission to read these books together online through the end of June. Read it as many times as you can to build your fluency and your practice with these words. This is a biography, so we are reading nonfiction about somebody's life. I want to encourage you to get some paper and a pen or pencil or something you can write with, because as we read some of this information, I'm going to encourage you to pause the video and jot down some notes. That's something that readers do sometimes to remember information that they're reading. I will share the screen with you and we can begin. So this is, again, a biography. That's the genre. Genre is the category of book. We're reading about a person. The person we're reading about is Helen Keller. You might have heard about her. If not, that's okay. We're going to learn about her now, but she's a very, very famous person that lived a long time ago, and she's just part of our cultural knowledge now. Like a lot of grown-ups know about Helen Keller and who she was and what was special about her. The author of this book is Catherine Rawson. Follow along with me with the table of contents. I would love to have you read out loud with me. Ready? Read with me. Baby Helen, a new world, an angry girl, teacher, Helen learns, Helen grows up, and then the glossary or index. So we're going to learn about the beginning of her life and the steps in the development that she goes through until she becomes an adult. And that makes sense, right? It makes sense that a biography would start with when she was a baby and then a teenager and then an adult. Okay, it looks like this is her home because I see a little caption here pointing to that picture. It says Ivy Green, the birthplace of Helen Keller in Tuscumbia, Alabama. So where was she born? Alabama. She was born in the South, and it looks like they named that house Ivy Green. Okay, let's read about baby Helen. Ready? Read with me. In 1880, the Keller family lived on a farm in Alabama. June 27th was a happy day for them. On that day, their first daughter, Helen, was born. Helen was a healthy baby. At the age of 6 months, she began to talk. She could say tea and wawa for water. At 1 year old, Helen began to walk. She loved to explore the world around her. She was happy in her family's pretty white house. So I'm going to share some of your background knowledge with me in my inference. She's developing normally. She was born healthy. She started to talk at 6 months. That's normal. She started to walk at 1 year. That's like right in the middle of average. That's totally normal. So she's a happy, healthy baby. I'm going to keep going. Here we go. Read with me. Then in 1882, so how old is she? About 2. A terrible thing happened. Helen became sick with a bad fever and almost died. Her parents were very worried. After a few days, Helen began to get better. The fever went away, but there was still something, I can't see word, something wrong. When Helen's mother waved her hand in front of Helen's eyes, Helen didn't see it. When the dinner bell rang, Helen didn't hear it. The fever had made Helen blind and deaf. She was only 19 months old. So not quite 2 years old. 2 years old would be 24 months. So she's a little over a year and a half. Okay, let's stop here. I encourage you to pause my video and write down some notes. You might write, Helen was born in 1880. When she was almost 2, she got very sick and almost died. And after the sickness, she had lost her sight and hearing. Okay. Okay, let's keep going. After that, I'll check and see, are there any more? Nope, there's the dinner bell and this is a thermometer that takes the temperature of bodies. Okay, here we go. So we just read about her being a baby. Now we're going to read A New World. Now Helen lived in a silent, dark world. All day she held onto her mother's skirt and followed her around the house. She couldn't see anything, so she touched everything. That was how she learned about the world around her. Since Helen couldn't hear, she didn't learn to talk. Instead, she used motions to communicate. She pulled on someone to mean come. She pushed to mean go. She rubbed her hand on her face when she wanted her mother. She sucked her thumb to mean her baby sister. So, what are the 5 senses? Sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste. She has lost 2 of those, and instead she uses touch for almost everything. And then probably her sense of smell. She probably used that a lot. She could touch and smell her mom and know that that was her mom. An angry girl. Helen couldn't talk, but she did laugh when she was happy. She also screamed when she was angry. Helen was often angry. It was very hard to live in a dark and silent world. Helen knew that other people talked. Sometimes she touched their lips when they talked. She moved her lips in the same way, but she still couldn't talk. This made her very frustrated, and she screamed even more. So this caption says, a young Helen Keller sits with her dog. So why is she so frustrated? She can't communicate. That seems very frustrating. Read with me. Helen would not sit quietly at the dinner table. Instead, she ran around and took food from other people's plates. Her parents didn't know how to help her. Helen also couldn't read or write. One day, Helen's father talked with some people at a special school. And here she is, Helen, with her teacher, Anne Sullivan, in 1893. So she is, I believe, about 12 or 13 there. The school was called the Perkins School for the Blind. They said they could help Helen. They sent a teacher to live with Helen and her family. That teacher's name was Anne Sullivan. Okay, let's stop, jot some notes. What have we learned about her? She could laugh when she was happy. She screamed when she was angry. And she was, I'm going to say she was naughty at dinner, but I don't know if she really was. She would run around and eat people's food. It's not funny, but And then in 1893, she went to a special school. Again, if you need to pause and write more down or draw pictures to remember what you read, you can do that. Okay, let's read about her teacher. Ready? Read with me. In March 1887, when Helen was almost 7 years old, Anne arrived at the Keller house. She had a present for Helen. It was a doll. Helen hugged the doll close. Then Anne took Helen's hand and used her fingers to spell doll. D-O-L-L. Some deaf people use finger spelling as a way of communicating. Anne tried to teach finger spelling to Helen. She spelled D-O-L-L in Helen's hand. Helen copied her. She learned to spell doll and many other words. She thought it was a fun game, but she didn't understand that this was a way she could communicate. So now wait, I have to stop. You might stop too. I have to change my notes. So I wrote down in 1893 she went to school, but I'm going to change that. In 1887, at 7 years old, she learned to spell. She learned to spell some words. Okay, there we go. Now keep reading. Read with me. One day, Anne and Helen went to get water from the pump. Helen put her hand under the cold water. Anne spelled water, W-A-T-E-R, with Helen's other hand. Suddenly, Helen understood. W-A-T-E-R meant the cold thing on her hand. Now Helen knew that everything had a name. Helen was very excited. She wanted to learn the names of everything. On that first day, she learned 30 new words. The most important word was teacher. Teacher became the name that Helen always called Anne. So let's read the caption. At this pump in Alabama, Helen Keller learned to spell the word water. Okay, Helen learns. Here she is with a book at her desk. Notice she's not looking at it because she is blind, right? But her hands are on the page. Let's read together. Ready? Read with me. Finger spelling gave Helen a way to communicate with other people. Now, Anne could teach her many things. Anne taught Helen how to read and write. First, she used special paper that had raised letters. Later, Helen learned to read Braille, a system of letters made for blind people. The letters in Braille are made with raised dots. Anne opened up the world for Helen. Now Helen could talk with other people. She could read and write. She wasn't angry anymore. Okay, we'll keep going. There she is in her graduation cap. Helen grows up. Read with me. Helen kept on learning. When she was a young woman, she went to college. Anne Sullivan sat next to her in all of her classes. Helen worked hard her whole life to help other people, especially blind and deaf people. I have to scroll down so we can see. Here we go, right there. She traveled around the world and met many famous people. She had many friends. Helen died in 1968 at the age of 88. She had lived a long and meaningful life. Wow. That was a pretty interesting story. So we have a pretty big index here. We read a lot of information there. I'm going to take a moment to write down some things that I think are important um, that Helen learned Braille. That's letters as bumps. And she graduated college. And she helped people and had lots of friends. That's great, even though she had a very significant disability. She worked hard and still learned to communicate with others and make friendships. Okay, quickly let's read the glossary. Braille is a system of writing for blind people in which letters are represented by raised dots. Communicate means to get someone to understand your thoughts or feelings. Fever is a body temperature that is higher than normal. Raised means higher than the surrounding area or surface. Okay, I'm not going to go through the index, but there's just so much information. I hope that you tell somebody a few facts that you learned about Helen Keller. You can replay this video as many times as you want to reread it. And I thank you for joining with me. I thank you for joining me. I'll see you next time.